Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Bremont Supermarine S301/BK. You can see and you can purchase this vintage-inspired contemporary dive watch on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right-hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this diver, with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this trim and traditional Bremont Supermarine S301. Released in 2017, part of a flight of supermarine divers, this was easily the star of the lineup, the S301BK, effectively doing 1 year in advance what Tudor is attempting to do in 2018 with the Black Bay 58. Well, Bremont beat them to the punch, and you can see to good effect. The watch is easy to wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, being relatively slim and compact, 40 millimeters across the round of the case. In vintage style, it has no shouldered crown guard, just a large knurled crown. Easy to wear because it's thin as well. It's 12.9 millimeters thick, which means it's 0.4 millimeters thicker than a Rolex Submariner, for comparison's sake. From lug to lug, it's a contemporary 49.2 millimeters, so though 40 millimeters in diameter, it has a good span across the wrist, giving it impressive stance and presence. The lugs, because this is important on any vintage style dive watch, are a 20 millimeter sizing, compatible with a huge range of Bremont OEM and aftermarket straps of all descriptions. Because of the triptych case construction, which effectively separates bezel, mid-case, and lug structures from each other, the watch wears more compact than even its 40 millimeter measurements would suggest. So I would say you could wear this watch comfortably on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters in circumference, with perfect security and a handsome proportion. Now you can see what I mean about separating the lug structure from the round of the case. It makes the watch far easier to wear on a small wrist. The strap is very substantial. It's an incredibly supple, minimally tanned calfskin leather with a contrasting binding, and you can see the layers in profile. This is a sheer cut that gives it a meaty chunkiness reminiscent of old style straps such as one might have seen in the mid-century heyday of dive watches in the 50s and 60s. The buckle itself is simple, all of satin finish, muted, and actually nicely matches the flow and flare of the lugs of the triptych case construction. The case finish is simple, black DLC on the center. You can see the striations that break up the mass, as well as polished bevels along the flanks of the lugs that thin out along the mid-case and flare again on the opposite side. Satin is used elsewhere for contrast. The bezel both looks good and feels good. Now stay tuned at the end of this video, because I am going to do a loom shot for the watch, just to give you an idea of how this vintage style diver lights up in the dark. But the bezel looks fantastic with the aged style of the calibrations, giving it a little bit of a golden hue inboard of ceramic. So you have a full ceramic bezel, effectively a scratch resistant to sapphire for practical purposes. This watch will avoid the fate of so many divers with their anodized aluminum inserts that wind up looking like beat up tank bumpers from patrols in the middle of war zones. Well, none of that here. You're going to have a crystal that's going to stay trim and clean, and a bezel to match thanks to the use of ceramic, an upscale touch for a watch in this price point. Now it does have the luminescent pearl, which you can line up with the minute hand. Interestingly, both minute and hour hands are executed in a cathedral style, more commonly seen on pilots' watches, but it actually works here, being a handsome platform for large amounts of this ecru colored simulated patina luminescence. I enjoy that immensely, especially the fact that functionally it works like modern Luminova, with the look of a vintage dive watch that's survived the ravages of years. Line up the pearl with the minute hand, you have an impromptu 0 to 60 minute countdown timer. You'll also note that there is a white on black printing for the date disc to make it minimalist and easy to reference when you need it, but because of the small size of the aperture, it's unobtrusive and doesn't spoil the vintage vibe of the watch. There's a small amount of red shock on the dial for contrast, as well as a little bit of an oblique reference to great dive watches, including those by Tudor and Rolex, admittedly, of the mid-century period. Turn the watch over on its flank, and you can see that the crown is rather highly stylized, with the Bremont propeller logo inboard and a golden collar alongside the knurling, which makes it quite easy to use. Now, just like the Breitling Super Ocean Heritage series, you don't really lose anything by subtracting the crown guards. Unless you're going to lose the wrist in the process, it's awfully hard to damage a crown when it's actually strapped to your arm. So I would take the accessibility and ease of use of an unshouldered, unguarded crown over the marginal additional peace of mind that comes with a crown guard. On the case back, nicely executed. You can see inboard there's a media blasted finish and then polish along the lines of the beautiful relieved image of a S6B Supermarine speed record flying, well, it's not a flying boat because it doesn't sit on a hull, but pontoon or seaplane. So this is the image of a record-breaking aircraft pushing the bounds of aeronautical design and engineering during the 1930s. The S6B dating to a period when Supermarine, later known for creating the Spitfire that flew against the Me-109 in the Battle of Britain, later against the FW-190 and even jets, but during the 30s known as a manufacturer of float planes, and this S6B attaining an incredible 400 plus miles per hour with floats attached. Now the caseback is screwed in, the watch has water resistance of 300 meters, and inside is what is effectively a ETA 2892 in chronometer spec, so a high-grade 38-hour automatic winder finished to COSC chronometer standards and regulated accordingly. It's very precise, COSC being a standard of testing that endures for 2 weeks, and the watch must meet a tolerance of no worse than -4 plus 6 seconds per 24 hours. It's an impressive level of refinement, again, for a watch at this price point, and one that vintage equivalents would never have known. Now, the timepiece does feature hacking or stop seconds. Pull the crown. Now you can synchronize it to an inaccurate reference time. There's also a quick set feature so you can rapidly cycle the date should the watch run down or encounter an irregular length month. You can see this handsome neo-vintage diver in a perfect size with gorgeous detailing on our website. Stay tuned for the loom shot. And I'm back with the Bremont Supermarine S301, though the dial does have a vintage vibe to it with that ecru colored simulated patina luminova. You can see that it is highly functional in the modern sense, crisp, sharp, with a high contrast. You can even see the luminescent pearl of the bezel as I line it up with those gorgeous fully luminescent cathedral style hands at center. This is the Bremont Supermarine S301 BK.